so I guess Van Buren was doing stuff for RKO. Fleischer was doing stuff for Paramount. Disney just for himself, I suppose.
And then he just sold it to everybody, I guess.
Everybody,
yeah. Yeah, like I don't think he had, but he got pretty wide distribution, I think.
Yeah, because, yeah.
Even though the animation studio never really made money because he spent too much. There was enough cash coming in that he was able to pretty much keep going. I think there was some point where he was about to declare bankruptcy or something again. Like at one point Disney did declare bankruptcy, and then he was never really financially good because he put so much money into training and so much money into each cartoon. Like, he would be given a budget for like $10,000, which was huge, and he would spend $15,000 on a cartoon, which is insane.
Good God.
And he'd be like, but I made a good cartoon. And everyone's like, we're never going to make this money back. So, like, the animation studio was never really profitable, actually, but until he made the theme park. And then the theme park was profitable. So it's kind of interesting that, like, of course the animation is, like, what made the brand, but in terms of actually making money, he was much better at running the theme park and making money in the theme park than ever making money from the animation. Which is interesting, because there's this, the theme park was a mess when it first started, but it very quickly became, like, the first profitable Disney thing.
Yeah, the sad thing is that, these other companies are gone, which means we don't have any of... we don't have Van Buren Land. We don't have these other theme parks. We recently went to Knott's Berry Farm.
Knott's Berry Farm.
Peanuts.
Yeah, which has stuff from, like, the Peanuts comics, which is cute.
And I understand Six Flags does
Six Flags,
looneytunes
bought, like, Looney Tunes so they could, like, put them up. But it's not the same. Like, obviously, Disney is really smart with their, like, integration. I mean, I fucking love Disneyland.
Wasn't there, like, Flintstones, a roadside attraction?
Yes, there is a Flintstones where you can go to Bedrock.
Yes.
You can,
Bedrock. It's been abandoned for 30 years.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Like, you can still go there and, like, walk around in it, but it's not, like, a working park.
It's, people are really... Disneyland and the Disney properties are just a monoculture. It's very sad. We need, I guess the lesson is we need Van Buren Land.
Yeah,
this
you
is
and
all
I should
public
just
domain.
make Van Buren Land.
It'd be pretty deranged, and it's the sort of thing that people...
So, like, Fleischer hated Disney, like, madly. Like, Max Fleischer hated him.
The creative one.
Yeah, he hated Disney because he was like, for a long time, they were neck and neck in terms of popularity, actually. Like, Fleischer's first full-length feature film came out slightly behind Snow White, and actually did about as well.
Huh. What was that? Was it one of
I think it was a Popeye.
I didn't realize there were any...
The Sinbad the Sailor? No, wait. I'm sorry. It was the Gulliver Travels thing or whatever. Yeah, so the first Fleischer movie was like a Gulliver's Travels, and it actually, surprisingly enough, did very well.
People love Popeye. People love that style.
Well, people liked it, and it was more, like, it was also very well done, and people were interested in it, so actually, like, I was surprised to learn that the Fleischer movie sold, basically, as well. But the problem is, Max Fleischer, first off, kind of broke up with his brother at some point, and also, like, the big band jazz sound kind of went out. Also, Fleischer made the really weird, dumb mistake of relocating to Florida, and he lost a lot of his key people because he wanted to relocate to Florida, including he couldn't really bring Cab Calloway down there because Florida was so racist at the time that they threatened to kill Cab Calloway if he ever came down there a second time. Like, literally, people went up and were like, if you ever bring that man here again, we will shoot him. So, like, Fleischer had this... He was so mad at Disney. He had this insane idea that he was going to animate the center of animation from LA to Florida. So he, like, moved his whole studio because he was like, I'm going to make this a thing because Florida has anti-labor law, like anti-union laws, and because it's cheaper there. And he's like, I'm going to make the whole industry move. And that's not what happened, of course. So it was just insane. And the animators, like, didn't like living there. because all these animators were like California boys or from New York, and then to suddenly live in like humid Florida, like humid rural Florida was like insane for them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this just all of this to say, interesting Fleischer fact. His last word ever was the last thing he ever said. The last thing he ever said was that son of a bitch. He was dying and he had like had a stroke or something. He could barely even talk or move, and his kids brought him an article about how successful Disney was.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. They were mad at him, I guess, and they said, and he said that son of a bitch, and they said that it warmed their hearts because it showed them that their dad was still there, and he was like still himself, because it was such an integral part of his. And the saddest thing is, no one remembers Fleischer except for
Betty
us
Boop
and the others.
enthusiasts.
Betty Boop, but people know Betty.
Yeah.
It's like people know Betty Boop, but they don't know Fleischer.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like at least like his. I would say though that like if you would all start to dive into animation history, you almost immediately hear about Fleischer. So he's not completely buried in the sands of time. He just definitely lost to Disney.
Van Buren is buried in the sands of time.
Yeah.
You can read an entire like big book on animation, and they'll be mentioned as an also ran, even though they made like 1 billion cartoons.
Yeah, I wrote a thesis on Bugs Bunny and had to do a bunch of animation research and read about the whole history of animation in this period. And Van Buren got mentioned maybe once, and I actually like did not remember anything about it, or I had never seen a Paul Terry or Van Buren, even though I did so much research into this period, because they're not considered important at all. There's a reason, though, honey.
Well, we're gonna show some of these cartoons. If you don't mind, I'm gonna actually get my glasses on.
So you know how it's a thing with neurotypical, specifically like ADHD, or it's just like that you will have these obsessions. This is definitely mine. Like cartoon history. So when I get going on a tangent, it's very hard for me to stop, but I hope you enjoyed learning about Fleischer, the man who, his life would have been so much better if he had just, like, stayed in his lane. You know, like, he was just so into, like, he just was like, Disney's a hack. Like, he was just so taken up with hating Disney. And it's like, they made good stuff. I think the other thing, too, is that, like, people have this memory of Disney being, like, the first to do a lot of stuff, and he wasn't. That's one thing that made Max Fleischer like really bad, is that he made better cartoons earlier, like when Disney was still making like really negligible, not interesting things. The Fleischer brothers were already making really interesting cartoons in the 20s. They had really pioneered a lot of stuff. It became like very clear, like even as soon as the 40s, like nobody cared. So I think that's something that made him mad, is that they were definitely like a pioneer in the industry, and it took them not very long at all. I mean, they were still like in it. They were still doing things, but in his perception, Disney's the amount of praise and money and like positive criticism that Disney was getting, he did not deserve. And also it was like so much more than the Fleischer Studios was getting, that he just became like really fixated on that. Which, like, as opposed to somebody like the Looney Tunes crew, who saw what Disney was doing and then at some point decided that they were going to do something in opposition to it. They were going to find their own lane, right? And so that's how we get the Looney Tunes characters, who are so beloved, because they were trying to find their own style that was juxtaposed with Disney. You only survived by either copying Disney or recognizing that you were working in Disney's ecosystem now, even by the 30s. That everything you did was in competition with or in juxtaposition with Disney. And some people weren't able to emotionally handle that. Specifically Max Fleischer had a really hard time with that. I'm trying to like bring my TED Talk to an end so that we can just slide into the next cartoon. I do like some of the some of the Van Burens are pretty fun. They just, I think for me, they just don't have a very firm directorial hand. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of care put into them. Like the characters are not consistently drawn. It's kind of just a random bunch of gags.
It's very difficult to find my glasses without having my glasses.
That's True, Velma.
You were saying that, Looney Tunes survived about, by juxtaposing themselves.
Well, not
to
survive, but they made the reason that we know them is because they recognized they were in Disney's ecosystem and they did something to oppose that.
Sure, but what's the role of, let's say, the World War II propaganda?
I mean, just everybody did that.
Everybody.
Everybody did that.
Mm.
Everybody had to do World War II propaganda. Like the U.S. government literally paid them.
Yeah, I just feel like.
Well, and the thing was, by that point, Bugs Bunny was already an established star.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Looney Tunes characters were already pretty like the classics, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy,
Private
Porky
Snafu.
Pig.
That was them, right?
Yeah, and they were literally like hired by the military to make a whole series called Private Snafu. So, that like Bugs Bunny was already. His inception was in opposition to Disney, and then that allowed him to become a personality of his own. And then by that point, he was such a big personality that the military literally was like, we're going to hire him, essentially, to do propaganda. We're going to hire the Looney Tunes guys to make propaganda for us.
Love it.
Because, Bugs Bunny's a Marine.
Mm.
He actually has, he's an officer in the Marines. He got promoted several times throughout World War II.